first thing
conference
we
will now
do.
be recorded.
Okay, Ken is starting to record it. Now, Ken, quick question on that. That's just an audio, right? And then is that on our website?
Audio and video of everybody on the screen and everything I put up on the screen.
Okay.
Watch what you're doing on your camera.
I was wondering why I was getting some weird emails. No, I'm just. Okay, start the meeting. I guess first thing is to approve the agenda. The only thing on the agenda that we need to take off is the consent agenda. The Memorial Day parade has been canceled. So we do not need to do any action on letter C of the consent agenda. So does anyone have any changes or questions to the agenda as presented? What was that? Did someone approve the agenda? Make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Chuck.
Okay, I got a motion by Sean Ryan, and I will second it to approve the agenda. So we'll do a roll call. Councilmember Seiler?
Aye.
Councilmember, let's see, who's next in line on my thing? Wolf?
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan?
Aye.
Councilmember Bass?
Aye.
And Mayor Nicolai says aye, so it passes 5-0. The agenda is approved as presented with the one change on Memorial Park and the consent agenda. So the first thing is, Patty, you're going to take the show and introduce Brad and Aaron, and we're going to go through the audit presentation.
Abby, you gotta turn your mic on.
Patty, are you there?
Oh, I forgot to put the mic on.
Oh,
Anyway, start all over. Yeah, today we have Brad Kuldesack and Aaron Enstad of Abdul Eichenmeyer here. They're going to present to you the 2019 annual financial audit report. Brad's new to the team. He's replacing Kyle Myers, who you all have known and seen for many years. Aaron's been with us for quite a few years, and happy to still have her on board with us. So I don't know that Brad has met all of the council. So as I say your name, if you can just make a wave. So we'll start with the mayor, Chuck Nicolai, Rick Seiler, Bruce Wolf, Maggie Bass. Who am I missing? Sean Ryan. And that's our council and mayor. So with that being said, you guys can take it over.
All right. Well, thank you, Patty. Can you hear me? Everybody can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. My mic sometimes goes out, so I always want to double check. So, so yeah, thanks for having us tonight. We will, Aaron and I are going to go through the report. I'm going to start out with kind of going through some general things, and Aaron's going to go through some of the more detailed results of the financials. So the first page here, again, just wanted to thank you for having us tonight. You can flip that. Patty, are you running the show?
Ken is. Ken
Okay.
Ondich.
You can flip the page.
I'm running now. I'm trying to get it to go and it will not go for me.
Okay. Well,
There we go.
Okay, here we go. As I was flipping that there. So what we're going to go through, I'll go through the audit opinion and our responsibility. Aaron will go through the general fund results, financial results, other governmental fund results, enterprise fund results, and then at the end we have a series of ratios that compares your city to other cities within Scott County in a number of different financial metrics, as well as cities throughout the state of Minnesota of similar size. So other cities, 10,000 and under population size cities. So she'll go through those at the end. and flip it. Next slide. So this slide, I'll just talk about our responsibility in performing the audit, and as well as the Minnesota Lean Compliance report that we issue. First, our responsibility or objective in performing the audit is to give an opinion on the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So we are issuing an unmodified or a clean opinion on your financial statements, which is the opinion you've had in the past as well. So it's the opinion you're looking for when you have a financial statement audited. And that just says that we believe everything in the financial statements is presented in accordance with accounting principle, and there's no material misstatements within the financials. So to arrive at that opinion, we'll look at a number of different transactions throughout the within the financial statements. You can flip one back, Ken. You're getting ahead of me there. So we'll look at your internal controls, different transaction cycles. So we'll look at, make sure bank reconciliations are done appropriately and timely. Some of the bigger or higher dollar amounts, like your taxes and assessments, making sure those are all getting receipted and coded in the right buckets in the city. Look at your state aids. You can get a number of state aids that we make sure are in the right buckets as well. And we also look at capital projects, just to name a few things, to make sure all those expenses are getting the right buckets as well and properly accounted for. So we'll go through all that to arrive at our opinion. And so we're out there, I think we're on site this year for 4 days, 3 or 4 days, and going through a number of different things. So the other piece on here, the Minnesota Lean Compliance. So the state auditor requires us to go through a series of checklists related to statutes that they want us to test as part of the financial statement process or audit process. So there's a series of 7 checklists related to your deposits at the bank and investments, your contracts and bids, and other requirements around issuing bonds and those types of things. So we go through each one of those 7 checklists and determine if there's anything in there that was non-compliant. And we didn't find any non-compliance this year. If you remember, I believe last year we had 1 compliance finding related to collateral. So that was corrected and not reported again this year. So now I can flip it. So that this page we do have, however, going through those internal controls, as we've reported in the past, limited segregation of duties. The complete finding is outlined in the management communication letter that you also have in your packet. But it's similar to prior years.
I sent my text to Andy now.
Someone asking a question? Sorry. Mike, is that you? I think your mic's off or you're muted.
No, there was no question. I think we had some feedback from someone else.
Okay. All right. So, so this around the payroll process, the payables process, and receipting process, just the limited number of staff in these transaction cycles, it just raises a higher level of risk of misstatement or fraud. So I always like to remind councils that if what you're seeing on a monthly basis as far as financials, make sure you're looking through it. It is your responsibility to oversee those financials that you're getting. If you see anything unusual or something that's maybe not expected or something that what you haven't seen before, make sure you're asking questions and getting a good answer. We didn't see anything unusual when we were going through any of the information, but we're not looking at it on a monthly basis either. So just make sure throughout the year you're looking at those financials, paying close attention to them, and you're asking questions for them about them. Any questions at all related to that? Okay, then we can flip the page there, Ken. Then Aaron's going to go through the general fund results and all the other funds, the kind of the financial statement results. And again, feel free to ask questions throughout. We'll try to answer those. So take it away, Aaron.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us tonight. So like Brad said, I'm going to take a look. We'll take a look at some of the individual funds and their performance this year. So first, starting off, is we're looking at the general fund unassigned fund balance. So if you see, well, it's kind of the blue and gray line matching up. but that is your fund balance policy compared to your unassigned fund balance, and then the red line is your budget. So you'll see each year you're right at your fund balance policy of 50%. So you have 50% of next year's budget in unassigned fund balance, which is available fund balance to be used for anything. On the next slide, this is your general fund budget to actual. So taking a look, you see your revenues were over, you received $80,000 more in revenues, and then expenditures were under by 53. So really good job with budgeting and kind of predicting those amounts. Overall, you had an increase in fund balance of 140,000. That does include the transfer out of 120,000 to the golf course, which is that transfer out there. But overall, really good increase into the general fund this year. Then on the next slide, this is looking at general fund revenues by type. So kind of your major revenue sources that go into the general fund and just seeing the trend over the 3 years. So if you can see, your taxes have gradually increased over the last 3 years. Your intergovernmental, which is your grants received from state, federal, anything like that has been pretty consistent year after year, mainly consisting of LGA. And that's your main sources of revenue going into your general fund. On the next slide then. So this is looking at your general fund expenditures by type or program. So your general government, public safety, public works. You'll see that general government's fairly consistent. Your public safety did have an increase this year. That increase was budgeted in there. Public works has steadily increased over the past 3 years. Culture and rec, in 2017, that was due to the pool, that large expense for the pool. So that kind of throws off that number a little bit, then transfers out in others. On the next slide, this takes a look at your special revenue funds. So your special revenue funds, there's a specific source of revenue that's coming into these funds. It's usually restricted for specific purposes. So you'll see a lot of these are grant related. So not many major changes in these, but a couple of the small cities project did decrease. There were 4 new loans that were issued with the small cities development program this year. And you can see most of the fund balance in there is restricted. The next slide. So taking a look at your capital fund, your capital project funds here. So looking, probably the only thing to take a look at is, you have a deficit fund balance of 270,000 in your Highway 14 project fund. That will be funded with future bond proceeds, and that in the county reimbursements and all of that too. So that's probably the main item to point out there. You can kind of see where they're assigned and restricted. Then the next slide is the debt service fund. So this just takes a look at all of your current general government or governmental fund debt. You can see the total assets, cash, and the total debt outstanding and when it matures there. And then the next slide is nice because I will graph it out for you. So here, this takes a look at your next 10 years of debt service payments, which is really nice to kind of help plan on when you're issuing new bonds and whatnot. So you can see after 2021, it drops off a little bit. One bond is paid off at that time. So that gives you a little either issuing a new bond or putting more away for capital reserve, or gives you some options on what planning to do. I'm guessing with the 2020 project, that will be replaced with another bond. On the next slide, so that was all your governmental funds. Now we're going to move into the enterprise funds. So with the enterprise funds, those operate a little bit differently. So those are you receive charges for services into these funds to pay for the expenses. So your charges should be enough to cover your expenses. So in the top graph, we're looking at the blue is your operating receipts, and we want the blue bar to be enough to cover your operating disbursements plus your debt service payments. So you'll see in the waterfront, pretty consistently over the last 3 years, there's been a surplus in there. And you can see that then in the next graph, it looks at your cash balance and your minimum target cash balance, which is 50% of operating costs plus your next year debt service payments. So basically the difference between those two, the 1.9 million and the 780,000 is kind of what you have available for capital reserves in that. So you have a very healthy fund balance in these in this water fund. And on the next slide, the sewer fund. So you'll see a similar thing on the top graph. Your operating receipts have been enough to cover your disbursements and debt payments. And then also a pretty large reserve in the sewer fund as well.
Aaron, if I could interject here, and Patty, would
Yep.
you weigh in if need be? This is Mike speaking. That part of that cash balance is capital projects. Plus, we've got in the future here, we've got some increased debt service payments, and we review the 10-year budget with the council when we do the budget. And so when we forecast that out, that while it looks like there's an awful lot on the cash side, is we also have a number of capital projects coming in the next 3 to 5 years, as well as you've seen in some of the replacement projects that when we take those on, whether it's with the replacement of the filters or whether it's the biosolids project, those projects are not little projects when they come in. And so we've got that 10-year CIP project as well as the debt service schedule. And we typically go through and show you what that picture looks like every time we do the budget in the fall.
Yeah,
Aaron,
that's good. No.
this is Bruce. I have a question. I appreciate your comment there, Mike. I guess what I'm wondering is, should we reflect a different policy amount then? Because it does seem very distorted that we have such high cash balance. If we're really saying that we're going to be using the money for a purpose, it would. I'm not sure how to explain why our fees aren't going down if we have such high balances.
What you're looking at there is, as Aaron said, is that that's the following your debt service plus 50% of the operating costs for what that is right now. But what you can't see is you can't see in the picture the increases on the debt service and some of the capital projects that are out 3 to 5 to 7 years that doesn't show up in here, and you're not able to explain that story. That what you're seeing at the bottom as a minimum carrying amount is the 1 year's principal and interest along with 50% of the operating costs is what is recommended that we have to satisfy the rating agencies and just for normal financial operations. But what you're not able to see, like I said, is the picture 3, 5, and 7 years down the road with the cash balance that you see in front of you.
And I think I'd add to that a little bit too. I don't believe that's a city policy to have that. That's a recommendation that we as auditors have in there. And we just recommend that for all enterprise funds, that for funds that you're collecting user fees from, that you have enough, that's a minimum. You don't want to ever fall below that. It's not necessarily a target you want to get to. It's somewhere you don't want to fall below that line. So it's not a city policy to have that as a minimum balance, but it is something we as auditors we're recommending not to fall below that line.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that response. And maybe the next budget we can kind of go through that again and kind of explain if it's not what we're earmarking. Maybe earmarking is the right word. If you're thinking we're trying to keep extra money aside for the next 3 to 5 years, kind of how does that work? Because it does, it just seems like an eye-popping large balance, or Aaron or Brad, doesn't it appear that way to you?
Yeah, I agree. When you look at this, it's tough to know the story. Maybe next year we look at modifying this so we include in what's being assigned for future projects in that. So yeah, it kind of gives you a little bit more context of what the city's planning to do with that money. It's not just money available to be spent or to be used. There's certain things that it's being reserved for. And I think that's, kudos to the city for having this balance and being, ready for those capital project and capital needs as they're coming down the road. You're planning good for that. So that's something I think we can look at to modify this next year. We're always looking for ways to modify things and make things better and make it easier for everyone to understand. And I think that might be a good thing to change if we can kind of show you guys what portions being assigned for future capital.
And now this is Patty talking. So just to keep in mind too, we had some real hefty increases in our sewer rates when we first built the waste treatment plant. But we still had so many street projects that we had to do, and a lot of it had to do with the sewer fund. So what we tried to do with our financial advisor, Springstead at the time, now Baker Tilly, is we looked at the schedule and said, okay, we know we're going to have this debt for the sewer. We don't want to have to keep on increasing the sewer rate. So let's make the payments less now for the next 5 or 6 years, and then we're really going to have to bump them up. So a lot of that, and I think too, Bruce, what we can show you is what we really mean by, this is what's coming up here. And like you said, an earmark it and say, okay, well, at least now we have an explanation as to why that balance is so much higher. So it's not just capital projects, it's also to take care of our debt.
Okay. Well, I think, yeah, to be able to tell the story is kind of where I'm coming from, but it's hard to say if we have excess income over expenses, if we're just leaving that as a cash balance, or we're actually proactively making a decision year to year. I'm not, but I understand what you're saying and I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
So moving on to the electric fund. You'll see here, same operating receipts are covering your operating disbursement and that. And then you'll see here, it matches a lot closer to that target cash of the 50% operating costs and debt service. So that's much closer. They're not as much a reserve in the electric fund.
And this is Patty talking again. There is no debt service in the electric fund, just for your information.
Same, yeah, there is no debt service in there, so operating costs. Then on the next slide, so this is the Gulf Fund. So a little bit different story here. So you'll see that pretty consistently your operating receipts are not covering your disbursements and your debt service over the past 4 years. And then you look at your cash balance, and that has also been the trend. There is a decrease in cash balance. So if you look at what the trend has been and seeing where your cash balance is as of 12/31, by 12/31 of 20, you're probably going to be in the negative if it keeps on trend. So I think I think it's something that should be taken a look at. And I know we've talked about it over the years, and you guys have talked about it plenty too. But yeah.
And currently now you're transferring $121,000 in it, and you've done that for you've been doing that for many years. So I don't know what your budget looks like for 2020 specifically for this fund, but I don't know if you increase that transfer or not. But like Aaron said, following the trend of the cash balances, it's pretty clear to see that if nothing changes, you would end up with a negative cash at the end of this coming year. for this current year. And given the status of, well, I guess golf courses are open now, so you're probably getting a lot of business. People are trying to get out, so maybe this will be a good year.
That's what we're hoping.
Yeah, Brad, if you notice all my gray hairs, that probably majority of it is trying to figure out the golf. So
Yeah.
Then on the next slide is the ambulance fund here. So you'll see the operating receipts are covering the disbursements, pretty low, both of them, around 15,000 receipts, 10,000 for disbursements. You know, consistently building up that reserve in that fund. Then on the next slide, storm sewer. So same thing, and I think this is similar, you know, all the future capital and whatnot, having that available, fund balance and cash balance in this fund. We've had a steady growth, increase each year, but yeah, there will be capital items coming along that will be used for that.
And $600,000 cash balance in the storm sewer fund can go pretty quick if there's some type of a major repair or something that happens during the year. So even though looking at the bars and the line there, it maybe look like there's excess there, but like I said, those projects get pretty expensive pretty quick. So unlike the sewer fund you had, was it $7 million in? This one, there's $600,000 in, and that can go pretty quick. So I would not say this is excess at all, nor would I say the sewer is, but this might not have the capital in the future, but certainly a repair would cost quite a bit of money too.
And then on the next slide, this takes a look at your total cash within every fund of the city. So you'll see it did increase from last year to this year, and majority of that being the enterprise funds increasing cash. So everything else has remained pretty consistent throughout the last 3 years. Then on the next slide, so this is where we're going to look at some of those key ratios. So this is comparing other cities similar in size in the fourth class, and then also cities in Scott County. And it's hard to compare apples to apples, but it kind of gives you an idea of where your city lies and compared to others, you know, close by you and also similar in size around the state. So it just kind of gives you an idea. It's really tough. Every city has different things going on and whatnot, but gives you an idea of where your city sits. So the first one is looking at tax rate. So you're right in line with cities your size and in Scott County. And the same with taxes per capita, right in line with both of those.
Aaron, can you give us the definition of class 4 cities?
Yes, that is cities is that 10 under 10,000?
Under 10,000 in population with that are reporting on a accrual basis.
Okay, that's what I thought.
There are cities under 2,500 population that report on the cash basis. So it would exclude all of those, but it would include any of the cities under 10,000 that are reporting on accrual basis.
All the cities under 10,000 in the state of Minnesota on an accrual basis.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And then on the next slide, here it takes a look at your long-term debt per capita. So you'll see here it is decreasing down, but you'll see that your taxes per capita, your tax rate was right in line. So meaning that you're not paying for this debt all based on just taxes. A lot of it's being, you know, the utility funds or assessments are help paying for them as well. And then the debt service expenditure as a percent of current expenditures. So this is taking a look at your governmental debt service expenditures, and you're right in line there as well.
And Aaron, does that first one, does that include all the ones that are special assessment debt?
Yep, so this one, so that's why there's kind of a disconnect between, you see your taxes are right in line, but then the debt's up, because this includes all debt. So it's all your enterprise debt and your special assessment debt, so.
As a general statement, do you feel that we do more special assessment financing, or are we just similar to most cities our size? Or do we do more or less general obligation, or do we assess more than the normal city on a road improvement, dedicated road improvement?
I wouldn't know exactly what, but it doesn't, to me, it seems similar. Nothing seems out of line when I'm looking at projects and what's being assessed. It doesn't, nothing's ever really stood out to me as overassessed or anything like that. I don't know details on comparing your policy to someone else, another city's policy, but nothing has stood out to me being overassessed by any means.
This is Mike speaking. That part of the difficulty in trying to answer that question, Bruce, is that you've got the construction of the $30 million wastewater plant that we're financing over 30 years. It depends on the magnitude of the other projects that the city takes on, i.e. the annual street construction that has been going on in this community since I believe it's about 2000, that the council kept on with that all the way through the time period 2008 until 2015. We took a hiatus and then we came back this last year with our first project. So the council has had a history of undertaking significant street and utility reconstructions in the community. As part of that, we built the fire station. You've got the financing in there for the Phillips Square Senior Housing Project. So you've got a number of other things in the totality of what enters into our debt picture that may or may not be consistent with what other cities are doing. So you can't draw a broad brush perspective unless you delve into taking a look at what's going on in a lot of those respective areas.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
On the next slide, so this is taking a look at your current expenditures per capita. So the city of New Prague is in the blue, so right in line with other cities in the county there. The next graph takes a look at your capital. A lot of this is just based on timing on when projects are happening. So it's tough to really compare, but you kind of see in the range of where you're at. But obviously over these next couple of years, with the 2020 project, there will be probably higher costs there. And on the next slide, so this takes a look at your expenditures by program per capita. So just over each department, kind of about where you fall there. Like I said, it's not comparing apples to apples, kind of similar to what Mike said. Each city gets involved in different things and different things going on. So it's really tough to compare apples to apples, but it gives you a general idea of kind of where the city sits. So with the expenditures and then the same with the revenues and where you sit there.
Aaron, this is Mike again weighing in, is that when you look at those categories, that's how we have to report to the state, under the state auditing report, is how they're picking up these comparisons with other communities in those specific categories.
Yep. Then on the next slide, we're taking a look at your debt service coverage. So this is just looking at what your total net income in your net income is in your water and sewer fund compared to your debt service expenditures. So you want to see over 100% here saying, yep, we're able to cover all of our debt service payments. Like I said, you're over that 100% in both the water and sewer, right in line there. Does anyone have any questions at all?
Not necessarily about the audit, but just a general question, because your firm does a lot of city audits. If you have a feel for what kind of loss in revenue we might or other cities might experience under the current economic situation. I've heard numbers that in some cases, people like the cities expect maybe 90% realization of their budgeted revenue. Do you hear that from other cities, or do you guys have any thoughts or comments about under these times, what you might think you might realize as far as your revenue projections?
Yeah,
You
so
wanna take
a lot of communities are going back to 2008 and the downturn in 2008 to see what happened back then. I know one finance person I was talking to, he looked back for tax revenues and delinquents back in 2008, and I think they had about 2.5% in delinquent tax revenues that year. So he just doubled it for this year, given that it's probably going to be worse, or maybe slightly worse. So, but they're just looking at things like tax revenues to see if there's going to be more delinquents in there. Any culture and recreation programs during the summer, if there's going to be, if some of those programs are going to go away, or if they're going to happen, or reduce schedule or whatever. So those types of things, and kind of look at each program individually and see, are these going to continue? Are we going to have less participants, or those types of things? Delinquent water and utilities, I'm not sure if you guys have a policy on waiving some of those penalties and those types of things or anything, but those likely will go up. But as far as a percentage, I don't know. I haven't heard a specific number that people are focusing on when they're talking about those types of things.
Well, and I was
Thank you.
talking with Patty earlier, and we were talking that your LGA is not going to be affected. You're still going to get your property taxes on time, which is good. It might not be as much as you normally would, but you'll still be getting it on time. So hopefully you'll still have your main pieces of revenue coming into your governmental funds, and then you can probably start to see a trend in your enterprise funds, just to kind of look to see what you normally receive during this time of year to what you're collecting now, and doing that. Any other questions?
Okay, then. I guess I want to thank Aaron and Brad. Sounds like it was a good audit. And thank you, Patty, for all you and your department's hard work in getting it done in a timely manner.
You're welcome.
So, does anyone
Yeah.
have any questions or comments?
I was just going to say that Patty and Leah do a really, really good job. We have very few audit adjustments, so huge kudos to them. They're super good at getting us information. They know all the answers to our questions, so they're doing an awesome job keeping things, and just meaning you guys get more accurate information throughout the year as well. You can kind of see where you're at. So it's great to work with them, and great to work with everyone at the city. So we appreciate you letting us work with you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Aaron or Brad? Okay, if not, I guess I'll look for a motion to approve the 2019 audit. Who is that? Rick? Okay. I got a motion by Rick to approve the audit.
I'll second.
I'll second it. So I got a motion and a second. Do we have any other comments? Okay, if not, I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Seiler?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan?
Aye.
Councilmember Bass? Did we lose her? Okay. Mayor Nikolai says aye, so right now, I think she's probably trying to get in, but
Yeah, it looks that way.
we'll give her a couple seconds. If not, we're already at 4-0, which would mean we have a positive vote. So Mike, is that okay if we just move on then?
I think she's coming back here.
Yes, can you hear me? I can hear you guys fine. I'm on my phone. So
Okay.
are we
We're
good?
voting.
I'm
just
an
voting.
aye.
Okay, you're an aye. We didn't hear that. Okay.
Okay,
So that
yeah, for
passes
the
5-0. Okay. Thank you again, Aaron and Brad. Brad, you can take the tie off now, buddy.
I will. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yep.
Bye.
Hey, next on the agenda, Mike, I think you're going to take this.
Yes, I'll handle it. Following the council's action at the last meeting where you adopted ordinance 312, which authorized a veterans memorial pursuant to Minnesota statutes section 416.01, the council is now in a position to formally enter into an agreement with the American Legion Post 45 for the purpose of contracting and maintaining a veterans memorial in our memorial park, just east of the library. We've included for your review, as developed by the city attorney's office, a limited use agreement that grants a non-exclusive limited use license to the Legion over the limited use area solely for the purpose of constructing and maintaining the memorial, and in exchange for the Legion's covenants and promises that are contained and spelled out in the agreement. From the council's perspective, the Legion is solely responsible for all costs and expenses associated with constructing, maintaining, lighting, and repairing the memorial, and there are no financial obligations that are the responsibility of the city of New Prague. The one condition that is there is that they've agreed to provide the city with the final design specifications of the memorial prior to beginning installation, which is subject to the city's review and approval in the council's sole discretion. We set up the initial term of this agreement for 25 years with the ability that it can automatically renew for 5-year terms unless otherwise terminated in accordance with the agreement. And that's spelled out under the termination provisions. The only change that we have since we first started talking about this is the proposed site is proposed to go from 60 by 60 to about 60 by 74 feet. And the easterly edge of the current sidewalk that is there would be the westerly most side of the memorial, and then it would head 60 feet to the east. And then if you go up to the sidewalk right of way, from that point back would be 74 feet. And I think, Ken, from the planning standpoint, in the consideration of what we're bringing you tonight, is that allows for the memorial to be set back a little bit further than right up on top of that sidewalk right away. So that, Ken, if you can bring that pointer up again, in the area of the sidewalk where he's got the pointer in kind of the middle there, is it allows that to be set back so that it's not so tight to the right of way to the north. So that's really the only change in there. We are recommending once that project comes back for final design, and Paul's on the line, and I'm not sure who else from the Legion or the project, They're here to answer any questions. So if you are to approve this limited use agreement tonight, they would come back to you once they have the final design completed for basically your final review and blessing to proceed, albeit I know that they've got some orders in early for granite, but because of the COVID-19, things are kind of on hold. And so I'll let Paul bring you up to speed on that. But basically, the Legion is in agreement. They've reviewed this and they're okay with the draft as you see in front of you. So it's really in the council's hands tonight. And Mayor, I turn it back to you with the idea that maybe there's something that Paul has, or maybe he wants to add for the council's benefit as to what the tentative schedule is and when he thinks that they might be bringing in a final plan and where we could see this going.
Okay.
And Dale Lent Means is on here as well, and we appreciate you guys' time tonight.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just have a couple quick questions, probably for Ken or Glenn. Now, we have to move some stormwater, right? So it doesn't go underneath
That's correct.
existing.
Yep. And that's going to
With
be
the
on the
change
left
of
side. I'm sorry, go ahead.
with the change of the footprint going from 60 to 74, that's not going to be affected?
Not affected.
Nope, not at all.
I'm
Okay.
trying to get the line here for where that new storm sewer line location is. It's all on the west side of the drinking fountain area.
And since we really don't know the schedule of how the Main Street project's going to go yet, and Paul and Daleen, maybe you guys can answer. I don't know when you would like to expect to start. So it's kind of an uncertainty right now.
Yes, at one time when the street project was supposed to be bid when it was, Ken had estimated that probably about Labor Day was when we would be able to start be moving dirt and get started on ours. With the idea of everything having been set back now, that obviously is up in the air. Like Mike had mentioned, we had gone to work and ordered granite. There's a 6-month lead time on that. And since the COVID-19, that granite quarry has also shut down. So everything is on hold a little bit right now.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions for Paul or Daleen, who's on the line?
This is Bruce. Paul, is the Legion going to be doing regular fundraising for maintenance in the future then, or you're accepting the responsibility for the maintenance into the future then, the Legion?
Yeah, we're taking care of, we've got a couple groups already that, not just the Legion, but a couple groups that said they want to participate with, keeping the place clean and that. So as far as maintaining it, there is not an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I guess I'll look for a motion to approve the limited use agreement.
Rick here.
This is Maggie, and I'll either make a motion or be first or second. I'm not sure who else was talking at the time.
Okay. Well, Rick beat you to the punch, so I'll give him the motion, and Maggie, you can do the second.
Fine.
So if there's any other comments, questions, if not, we'll go through a vote. Councilmember Seiler.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bass.
Aye.
Mayor Nikolai says aye. Passes 5-0. Paul and Daleen, you should be commended on your great job and efforts and funding this new memorial, and I'm looking forward to seeing when it's finished.
Well, thank
Yes,
you. And we certainly do appreciate the city's support on all this as well, and the community. You guys have just been great through all of this, and we really appreciate it.
All right.
and actually some people questioned if we were going to do the fundraiser that we do every February because they enjoyed it so much. So, it's not just a fundraiser, but it's an entertainment thing for the city of New Prague. So I thank you guys for everything that you've done, and we will keep you updated.
All right. Well, thank you very much, both of you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, it looks like we're up to the Glenn show. We got a couple of years, right, Glenn?
You do, yes.
Item number 3 and 4.
Item number 3 is in your packages have the memo for the 2020 street and parking lot seal coat bids. We reached out to 4 different companies looking for seal coat bids, and we got 2 of them. Allied Blacktop, Pearson Brothers. We do seal coating every year. We have a rotation and we have a schedule set up. We try to do every road depending on the service of the road, number of cars that drive it, or the traffic counts, and just appearance of the road. But typically about every 5 years is when we look at redoing the seal coating on there. So this year, and seal coating is, if you don't know, is just a hot product, hot tar, that's put down. You put chip rock on top of it, or granite, and basically all the granite does for us is it gives us the capability of opening up that road right away, instead of waiting hours before the oil would dry, so you wouldn't get splashing on the car. So that's what the granite does for us. It helps preserve the existing asphalt. It kind of gives it another refreshing drink, you might call it. Just makes it last longer. Just doesn't dry out and break up. So in 2020, we had 94,000 square yards, which consisted of 94,000 for the streets, and what did I miss here? 23,000 for parking lots. A lot of those parking lots were in the parks. There's 4 of them, 4 parks that have parking lots that need to be done. We'll also be doing the emergency services building, City Hall, and the library parking lot. So it comes to a total of 117,804 square yards, which is pretty typical. That's usually about what we're at. The price this year came in considerably less than what we were told to project. Nobody's really coming up with a great answer for me why. We could attest it to oil prices, but everybody claims they got that oil bought in a year in advance. So I'm not sure what the connection is, but they're all, like the one contractor says, well, just be happy it's low. So that was the response I got. But anyway, we got a price from Allied, which Pearson Brothers have done our roads since 2003, except back in 2017 when Allied got it. So now Allied is cheaper again this year in 2020. So Pearson's have been the show for quite a few years, but Allied did a good job in 2017. We got no concerns of awarding it to Allied Blacktop. So staff recommends that council approve the low bid from Allied Blacktop at the cost of 1.048 cents per square yard, and approve doing 117,804 square yards for the total of $123,458.59. I can answer any questions if anybody's got any.
Glenn, this is Bruce. Just to verify, then you're under budget about 23,500, and that would not be spent?
That would not be spent. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So he's under budget about $12,000. Bruce.
I came up with 23.5.
Well, the budget says 135,000.
And then the park,
Yeah, there's 12,000 coming from the Parks Department too.
Whoa, I got you.
Glenn, this is
Okay.
Mike. You don't have the painting numbers in here, do you?
No, the painting, yeah, there'll be painting that comes out. I'm sorry, Bruce, I should have thought of that. There'll be some painting that comes out of that 25, what did you say, 25,000 left over? But I believe that is less than $4,000, so it's not substantial.
okay. So about 20,000 won't be spent, a little less.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, if not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the street and parking lot seal coating quote to Allied Blacktop.
So moved.
Well, I made a motion. Do you want to second it, Sean?
Second,
Okay.
sorry.
I'll make a motion and a second by Sean Ryan. If there's no other comments or questions. Councilmember Seiler.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bass.
Aye.
Mayor Nikolai says aye, so it passes 5-0. Okay, the next one, Glenn. You gonna save us another 20,000?
I'm sorry, pardon me?
Are you gonna save us another 20,000?
No, I can't do it there. Nope, sorry. Next one would be quotes for the trail seal coating. We seal coat trails, again, try to average around that 5 year. And again, we look at the condition of the trail, so it doesn't automatically be 5 years. We've had some trails that just because they do so well, being the area they're in, don't have as much sunshine, things like that. We've gone 6 years, 7 years on them. So we look at each one, but quite typically it's about 5 years. We do a product called Replay, which is a soy-based rejuvenator. So it's not oil-based, which is just a lot better for the for the environment. I'm sorry, it's environment friendly. We've used Replay for seal coating since 2012, and we watched it pretty close. We did core samples for a number of years after we started using the product, and it's performed great. We quit using a heavy oil base. We used to put on a product that was like a slurry seal, basically like we use on the roads. But the product has a tendency of flaking off, and we think it looks worse. The rollerbladers don't like it. They claim it's rough, and so it just seems like this clear product being this Replay is the way to go, or has proven to me and to us that it really is the product to use. It dries quicker. It just seems to just work great. So we've continued with that. In fact, we don't even get a price anymore. The companies don't even want to give us a price that can't get Replay or don't have the ability to use the product. So we haven't gotten a price since 2012. I'm sorry, third year since 2012 that we haven't gotten a second price because nobody else has got Replay anywhere near us. So it seems like it's worked out great for us. We've got no concerns with it. The drawback, it doesn't give you that rich black finish. There's some communities that use it. I know Three Rivers uses it in their trail system, but they have to keep that rich black finish. They're going back and seal coating these walking paths more than every 5 years. And again, they're going to look at the product or the way the walking paths look, but sometimes they're redoing them every 3 years just to keep the rich black finish. So I don't think it's worth that black finish, so that's why we decided to go with this Replay many years ago. And as far as taking care of the asphalt on the walking path, we think it does a great job. So the Parks Department budgeted $15,000, Bargain Incorporated, which has been the product or the company that's been putting replay down for us for a lot of years now, came in with a total cost of $13,500 to do 1.16 miles of trails. So it's recommendation from staff to approve the low bid of $13,500 to Bargain Incorporated using replay for the 2020 trail seal coating project. If anybody's got any questions, they can answer them for you.
Glenn, was it last year that, was it Scott County was asking about it, or a couple years ago?
They wanted to get all the cities in the county on board to do a cooperative bidding, but they're using the slurry seal, and they did not want anything to do with the replay. And so and it really wouldn't have made much difference for us, because the only trail that they would have helped pay for any of it would be from 12th Street northeast by the high school going east along County Road 15 there for those 3 blocks.
Okay.
So that's the only trail they would have helped participate in at all. And it wasn't adding up to anything to go back to that slurry seal, in our opinion.
Okay. After it's done, do you get like a bucket of patch something, or how if you have to fix something and patch it, can you get patchwork with this replay?
No, the replay is just to keep the asphalt from deteriorating away and cracking up, no different than the seal coating on the roads. So if we have to patch a piece of trail, we do it just like the road. You get hot mix, cut out the hole, cut out the big crack, whatever you're doing, or whatever the repair is, then put the new asphalt in there. And then the next time that trail gets sealed again or seal coated, then it gets replay put on there.
Okay. I was just wondering if you had something that got replayed about 2 years or 3 years ago, and there happened to be like a small section that maybe it wore off for some reason, do they sell a patchwork that you could buy a 5-gallon drum of it and just put it on there?
No, they do not. The only time that I guess we did that was a number of years ago because of a road construction project. We did replace some trail in that road project, and the next year we brought Bargain in to seal coat with the replay. They did that section for us also because it was a fairly substantial piece of trail.
Okay.
So we do keep an eye on that. If it's just a 1 foot patch or something like that, we don't get that excited about it or that nervous about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else have any questions, issues with Glenn on this coding? If not, I guess I'll look for a motion.
So moved. This is Maggie.
Okay. I got a motion by Maggie Bass.
Okay.
Who is that?
Bruce.
Bruce. Second by Bruce Wolf. If there's no other questions or comments, Councilmember Seiler.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bass.
Aye.
Mayor Nicolai. Aye. So it passes 5-0. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Next, it looks like Ken, are you going to take this one?
I will. Got a little PowerPoint here for you. I'll get going. All right. So next item on the agenda tonight is an item from the Planning Commission meeting at the end of April. At our April 22nd meeting, we had a public hearing for garage ordinance or garage sale amendments to our zoning ordinance. And we'll get into the details here for you. So over the course of 2019 and even years prior, but not as quite as often, we had been receiving complaints from people that live adjacent to homes that were having, I'll call them serial garage sales, where they were continually having them, whether it be one or more times a month in the summer months, actually including spring, summer, and fall. We got a lot of concerns and complaints about traffic and noise that those are being generated by those garage sales. A number of them were running from Thursday through Sunday, for example. And after we got a couple of different sales that we had gone and taken photos at and just kind of documented, we talked to City Attorney Scott Riggs about it, and we ended up where we're at today with the ordinance being in front of you. But wanted to back up a little bit, just not so much even on the number of sales that were a problem, but it was brought to our attention that at least a couple of sites in town last year, and I actually have a couple of photos from one of those sites in the report here, where they were selling items that were really new, unused items, specifically looked like overstock type items that they had bought, maybe closeout items from the store, still in the package, never used, laundry detergents, electronics that had never been opened, that type of thing. So we were seeing that at a couple of sites as well in town on these sites that were having the more frequent garage sales. So one of the, go ahead. Okay. So that was one of the other issues that came up. So not just the number of garage sales, but what they were selling at them, which the overstock and the frequency, more like a commercial business at that point than a legitimate recreational residential type use where you're selling your unused items. So in talking to City Attorney Scott Riggs, looked through our zoning ordinance and our city code, found that we did not have any regulations on garage sales at all. I seem to have some recollection that back when I first started here that we did, but we couldn't come up with any language that we actually did have that going back then, even 15 years ago. But he suggested, and what we have in front of you tonight is his language that he came up with to provide a limit on the number of garage sales per year at 3, and then also limiting their duration per event, which would be 72 hours or 3 days, and providing this language in the zoning ordinance under a home occupation type head. That was really the best place we could find to put that, recognizing that they are legitimate type use in a residential area, just kind of limiting the timing and number of those sales. So a little more background on this item. So we had brought it to the Planning Commission for a concept review at the March 25th, 2020 meeting. We did call for a public hearing, advertised on our website, Facebook, two break times, and then had it posted out in the hallway, obviously, before the COVID-19 shutdown of City Hall. But we did not end up getting any public comment during the public hearing at our April 22nd Planning Commission meeting. I do know there has been a little bit of discussion on Facebook within the past 24 hours on the topic, but we have not received any formal comment. At least staff hasn't at this point. I don't know if the council has or not. But at this point, I want to go over specifically what the amendments are, just so everybody's very clear on what it is. So again, listing garage sales as a permitted home occupation, providing for a definition of garage sales being for the sale of secondhand goods with items offered for sale not obtained for the purpose of resale or consignment. So, just trying to limit the folks that go out, buy items in new condition or overstock items and then offer those at their sale, which is, really more of a closeout commercial type enterprise. Again, suggesting limiting the garage sale time period to 72 consecutive hours, which would be, again, like a Thursday through Saturday or a Friday through Sunday, however they would choose to use that. And then limiting garage sale events to a total of 3 per calendar year per property. One thing that's not in the ordinance here that I did want to bring up, some cities do provide for a freebie day on a citywide garage sale type event, which we obviously do have in New Prague as well. That's not currently in the language, but I do want to throw that out there as well for something to talk about in relation to that. Some cities provide basically 3 on your own and then 1 for the community type event, for a total of 4. Looking through other ordinances in the city and talking to Scott Riggs, a lot of cities do actually limit to 2 per year, but 3 is another common number as well. So that's why we are proposing 3 at this point. We don't want to obviously limit legitimate garage sales that people need to get rid of used items and make a little money and provide a good way to recycle those goods and ultimately keep them out of the citywide cleanup event as well.
Yeah, and I agree, but that was something that I took note. That's kind of a little, isn't it? I mean, for legitimate, I mean, just as a mom that has 4 or 5 garage sales a year, I mean, 3 seems very little. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead with your.
That's okay. So I won't go over the exact language, I'll just put it up on the screen here, but it is basically the summary that I provided to you earlier. Certainly at this point, just looking for initial discussion by the council. At this point, here's some pictures of one of the garage sales that went on a number of times over the course of 2019 that I actually had visited. You can see clearly, a number of household products that were never used. Not something you'd normally sell at a garage sale. That was a used item, electronics and other type home goods items and whatnot in there. So this is one that generated quite a few calls over the course of last year in particular, and even going into the year prior. So that was probably the number 1 offender, but we had others out there as well that neighbors were just fed up with the traffic constantly on weekends and throughout the summer weather months. So with that, I'm basically looking for any feedback from the council. You could choose to introduce the ordinance amendment at tonight's meeting, but more than anything, just want to get the discussion rolling. Again, the ordinance, if you want to introduce it, is in the packet for that first reading to occur.
Ken, would there be a way that we could make it so that that you have to actually come in and tell us and get a permit of some sort?
You could. Some cities do go to the permit level of things. I don't know that I want to propose that. Obviously, that would take staff time to administer. Giving the license, I wouldn't want to, or a permit or whatever you want to call it. I don't know that I'd want to charge for that. And if we don't charge for it, it's just going to take up more staff time to issue those. I don't know at this point if we could somehow do a registration system through our new permitting software, which the update will be live in a couple of weeks here, but I don't have an answer on that if we could do that at this point to keep the staff involvement down, just to track the number. But again, I think it's more of a on your honor type thing. If we get complaints, we would investigate that type of thing. And by and large, this is not a huge issue, but the few that were holding them often, we got calls every time they had a sale, and whether it be for the traffic or the noise, it did continually come out.
Well,
This is Maggie. I'm
Maggie.
willing to. Thank you. I'm willing to, have it be on the honor system, but if calls do continue to come in, then maybe we can move to something that's a bit more restrictive.
Yeah, this is Chuck. I think it'd be nice if there was, not charging them, but if they had at least register with the city. And the reason being that is, if you find out someone is kind of doing, not only the number, but if they're doing these ones that are for resale type items, and you had some proof, because obviously they should probably be charging sales tax for some of these items, things like that, the Minnesota Department of Revenue might want to get their nose involved in it too. So if they're happening too often, but if you don't have any way of tracking them, that way you could put on the registration, if they registered, this is what we're going to sell. And then if by chance one of us goes there to actually look at some of the stuff they're selling, and all of a sudden, well, it's all this retail stuff that they bought overstock from some company, then you could go back and say, hey, they did this, they violated the ordinance, and then that could be on a record. And then next time they register again, it'd be like, hey, the last time you didn't get cited, but if you do, I don't know. I just think you got to have a register, or else it's going to be he say, she said. Oh, it wasn't mine, it was the neighbor's. And I think you gotta, if you register at the location, then at least you have a way of documenting that, yes, they've only had 3. So when you do get a call, some people will say, hey, they're having it every week. And then if you look and they've only had 3 of them type of thing.
Well, who would be enforcing that anyway? I mean, would the police be the one that would be issuing the citation, or would it be you, or who would it be, Ken?
It would be a zoning violation because it's part of the zoning ordinance. So obviously they would get sent a letter. It could become a petty misdemeanor, but by and large, I would think the letter would take care of that, as it does with most nuisance type items that are out there.
Well, you could send a letter now before this even passes. You could send a letter right now. You don't need to wait for this, right?
Yeah, we could send a letter now, but the problem is we don't have any teeth, because we don't have any ordinance to stop anybody from having, one every weekend at this point.
Thank you.
And did the planning and zoning take action on this issue?
They recommended the council consider adoption of the ordinance as proposed and as written. Their main discussion was about the number of garage sale events per year. And that's where they kind of settled on the 3, but they didn't get into the weeds on the registration or anything like that. They felt it could be more of an on your honor thing. I'm not opposed to the registration if we can find a fairly simple way of doing it. Well, maybe they just call in and we log them per property. We have the property console in our permitting software, so I don't know that it would be too onerous. I just haven't looked into that in great detail at this point. A lot of cities do that.
Any other comments? So how do we want to proceed? Does anyone feel that this, change in the ordinance, section 714, with the recommendations of having 3 per year, does that suffice? Do we want to add say 3 and then plus 1 for the citywide, or do you want to leave it just at 3?
Question, Chuck?
Sure.
I just, if we go to a registering system, and that way we know it's not like a retail situation, it would be nice if they at that time they could request more than 3 individually. It's like my sister used to have them all the time, because the group of daycare kids. So she'd have once the daycare kids got to a certain age, she'd get rid of all their toys, and then would come in the new ones. So she'd have a little sale in her yard. Well, I always thought that was cool, but that would be beyond the 3. So I'm just saying, 3 is a lot. To cut it down to 3, it would be nice if there was an avenue where, if they were registering, and if they're going to need more than 3, then they could tell us at that point right there. You know what I mean? So if you had a flag in your Ken, if you had flag in your software, so that once they get beyond 3, you could warn them, and then they would have to give you a reason to give you an exception, or give them an exception.
I think we'd have to have a number on it, Rick. I would recommend, rather than some kind of open-ended.
So you'd rather have a 3, that's all you can have.
I'd rather have you say you can have 5 than to say you hit 3 and then you're at warning. That'd be hard to deal with that. I'd rather have a number in there.
Because that's the only thing I got a problem with is the 3, but if the rest of the council feels that it's, we could still get a unanimous vote on it. I'm just wondering what their feedback is on that, and otherwise the rest of it looks okay to me.
Well, I'd be fine with 3 and then say you also get the one free one when it's a citywide event. So that would really be technically 4, which would be basically, in theory, 1 per quarter type of deal.
Yep.
Yeah, but you hold it only during the summer. Your garage sales typically are April through October. So that's, now you got 4. You're at 1 a month, and I don't know if that's going to satisfy the people that are having the complaints or that are that are calling the city with the. I 3 is plenty. I don't know why we need to go any farther than 3. That still is 1 every other week during the summer.
Well, I think
every other third week.
I think the issue, though, where the complaints come in more, what I'm hearing from Ken is these ones that are selling the new stuff, because they're doing it like a business. They're probably buying the stuff online, getting it shipped in, and then when they got enough, they have these sales. So their sales are happening every week or every other week, and that's where the problem is.
Yeah, they have a good quantity and they get big numbers of people coming out.
Yeah.
So.
That's where the issue is. If you would eliminate, if it was just true garage sales, it's hard to, trust me, Sean, you and I, we have enough junk around our house the way it is, but it wouldn't take too many garage sales, they'd be gone.
Yeah, well, if you don't sell them in the first 2, I don't think it's gonna sell in the third one. So is my feeling, but we're spending too much time on this simple thing. I'll follow your motion, Chuck. If you want to add the free one in there.
Well, no, I'm just getting some feedback. I mean, is that fine? Do you feel that we do the 3 and with the additional free one on the, but I think that the key is we got to get teeth in there so that, Ken, you feel that we have enough teeth in there about these ones that are doing it for resale?
Yes.
Okay, that's more my issue, because obviously they're trying to skirt some sales tax issues so they can sell it cheaper than they could get it at the grocery store or anywhere else, and that's when they're running it as a business, and it isn't just a garage sale. That's my bigger concern.
Yeah, and this is Maggie, and I think 3 is plenty with the citywide garage sale adding a 4th. I think for the most part, people have a garage sale a year. I've seen that in my neighborhood, so they're not accumulating that much stuff, but just enough to have a pretty decent garage sale just even once a year. And oftentimes that's just the citywide garage sale, because they know that so many people are going to be coming to New Prague to shop. So I think 3 plus the citywide for a total of 4 is plenty.
Okay. Bruce, you got any comments?
No, I think 3 plus the 1 is plenty. I think it's okay for the citywide one. I mean, that's a chamber event. That's not a city event. So if we're granting an exception for a chamber event, I guess the rationale is we're promoting the community, and that's okay. I guess I'm just trying to think about through that, but yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. So Ken, as it's written right now, it doesn't have that in there, right?
Right, it does not. I would likely add that if you look at the ordinance language on this would be page 3, the last paragraph of section 1, currently says, additionally, a garage sale shall occur no more than 3 times within 1 calendar year per property. I would add language in there, plus 1 for a community wide garage sale event, just generically that language. And I can talk to Scott to maybe nail that down a little more, but that was generally how I've seen it, is like plus a community wide garage sale event.
Well, why don't we do that, since that seems to be the consensus? get that fine tuned, and then maybe at the next meeting we can do the first reading.
Can do.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Jim.
Hi,
Been kind of quiet, Jim.
I like to be that way. Can you hear me?
We can hear
Yes.
you.
Okay. Ken was gonna try and share my screen here.
I think you got it, Jim.
You're seeing it? All right, I
Yep.
wanted to talk a little bit about ordinances. I know the golf cart ordinance came up, and just looking at if we want to be able to extend time on that. So I wanted to just to go over and review what we have at this current time, and then from there attempt to review those ordinances, review what state statute allows at this time, and then what the state statute pertaining to ATVs and snowmobile. Our snowmobile and ATV ordinance probably needs to be addressed, just in the fact that there's a lot of other vehicles out there now, side-by-sides, that fit into maybe the class 2 ATVs. And I'd like to update that just for our definitions, to have those also included in those ordinance anyways. And then ultimately at the end, I'd like to get some guidance from the city council on, does the council wish to amend our current ordinances as they are written? So with that, we'll take a look at current statute regarding special vehicles. And I had sent out just the email today, just with the off-highway vehicle regulations, the DNR, if you had a chance to see that. But that is more of the ATVs, the off-road motorcycle, and then off-road vehicles also. But anyways, once chapter 169.045 just states the governing body of any county, home rule charter, or statutory city or town may by ordinance authorize the operation of motorized golf carts, all-terrain vehicles, utility task vehicles, or mini trucks on designated roads or portions thereof under its jurisdiction. And any authorization of any of those is by permit only. So currently, our motorized golf cart ordinance, which was passed February of 2010, within that, we had to follow those certain statute items that we were able to regulate, and we needed to define what a motorized golf cart is, allowed by permit only, and within that ordinance we have to designate the process to be able to get that permit, and then also designated the roadways and intersections that operations are allowed. And I think initially at that time in 2010, the idea was, hey, we have a city golf course here, and individuals with golf carts that store them at the city golf course would like to maybe maintain that storage in their garage or at home and just have the ability to drive it to the course. So I think initially that was the push to get this ordinance in place. Sometimes we have unintended consequences of that, to the point where, hey, at this time we have probably about, well, I would say more people with golf cart permits don't actually golf. They just use them for personal use around town. The statute also goes into the times of operation, sunrise to sunset, and there's a visibility clause in there that you have to be seen if inclement weather, fog, rain, something doesn't allow the vehicle to be seen 500 feet in advance. then it shouldn't be driven at that time, no matter what the time of day is. It also incorporates the traffic laws as they pertain or are able to pertain to a golf cart. We have to require a slow moving emblem on it. And then our operation is dictated that it operates at the right side of the curb, right along the curb. And the only exception is when it's making a left-hand turn, you move out into the lane to make that left-hand turn then. Operation on sidewalks and trails are not allowed by the city. All of our trails in town are non-motorized, so that's why they're not allowed at this time. The city could designate certain trails that they would be operational on if they chose to do that. And then the violation is a misdemeanor crime at this time. I don't recall having anybody charged with any golf cart violation in the time that I've been here. But we do make contact at times with them regarding driving behaviors or something, but generally it's just to talk to them about their behaviors and give them a warning, and normally that kind of takes care of it. We had one public inquiry to extend the hours of operation for golf carts beyond sunset last fall, and that individual is a homeowner in town that has a golf cart and just would like to see it extended so that he could utilize it more for social needs, that he could drive around with it if he's going to visit people, that he'd be able to come back after sunset. And then Sean, you brought up last council meeting just about, were we going to look at it just extending it, because sometimes during the summer sunset is late, you get done golfing, and then you may want to stay at the clubhouse for a little while socializing. So is there a possibility that we could look at something for golfers? I think all of that could be a good discussion. The only concerns about extending any of the hours is just the unintended uses then, that we can't necessarily state, hey, it's okay if you're coming directly from the golf course after sunset, but other use is not allowed, because we already have some people that before they leave their garage, they put their golf clubs in the back of their golf cart, even if they're just going to Coburn's, because they believe you can't drive on the road unless you're going to golf. So they drive around with their golf carts or with their golf clubs all the time. But I'd be open to that discussion then. Where you think that ought to go. One concern that I had just in my memo was some of that unintended consequences of opening it up a little bit. There would be a possibility we could look at limiting it to a certain hour that they could not be utilized. Just before the meeting, I was just looking at sunsets and times, and they range, probably the end of June is kind of the longest. Sunset is about 9:03, and then the twilight hours go till about 9:41 at the latest, and then they start moving the other direction again. But by the end of August, they're at 7:50. End of September, 6:54, and end of October, 6:01, which is the official sunset time, but obviously it's light for a little while thereafter, about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the angle of the sun. But with that,
Jim,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Jim, that was really how it started. You know, if you wanted to just narrow it to a specific time, let's say 10 p.m., I think that would be good. I think Mr. Volek, who had approached me and brought this this subject up last fall, was thinking more in like September and October or even April when you get those nice days, and he might want to take it out and run. But like you said, in October, after 6:01, he can't right now drive it. But you know, he still would want to use it till 8. So I could see where your point about you know, people racing around town at 1 o'clock in the morning on these things. I would be okay with just saying let's make it 10 o'clock. So whether sunrise, doesn't really matter on the sun setting time. That it's just a specific time. Would you be okay to that?
Yeah, I think I could live with that. And I think 10 o'clock would be a good time, just because that would kind of coincide with our quiet hours. That from 10 o'clock to 7 o'clock is quiet time. That if the end, not to say that golf carts make a lot of noise, but that would coincide with our same ordinance then with snowmobiles and ATVs. With that,
yeah, those side by sides do make that amount of noise too. So I could see 10 o'clock would be.
Yep, they can make a lot of noise. Yeah, depending on what they're used for and the kind of noise that you like when you're driving it. But no, that would be an option. I can look at that. I did speak to the county or city attorney today, and he indicated that yeah, that there is a possibility that we could extend the hours, but opening it up would probably more than likely just cause other issues and safety concerns. But 10 o'clock would probably work. Again, if that golf cart has standard stock headlights, tail lights, and brake lights to the rear, then I would see no problem with it. Anybody else?
I think it sounds reasonable.
But is that saying that it can be used for any purpose?
Well,
from sunrise to 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay.
At this time, we never addressed that in our ordinance, and I don't know that we. I mean, you could define it as, hey, it is strictly for to and from the golf course, and that's it. But somebody coming from the golf course and stopping at a restaurant or doing something on their way home, then you would always have that play with everything also. So that's why I think sometimes it becomes just as a general use. Then I know some people that would just strictly use their golf cart to go down and eat breakfast at Flipside every morning or a couple times a week. And I don't see that as a public safety hazard. They don't drive down the highway. They use appropriate routes to get there and are not a traffic hazard at the time. So I don't see that as a big concern right now. Setting it at 10 o'clock, I think, would be reasonable. That, yeah, people might use it as general transportation, but it has a time that it has to be off the roadway, and the concern is it's getting dark, and if vehicles are on the roadway, they are more difficult to see. Even though they might have their headlights and taillights on, they should also have the reflective 16 square inches on each side of it also. But I think that would be workable.
Jim, is it obvious that the ordinance requires that the person have a driver's license, a 16-year-old individual, as an example?
It does. We issue the permit to the person that applied for it. So that's who the permit goes to. And our ordinance does state they have to have a valid driver's license. I'll review that with the city attorney, because there are some well, the League of Minnesota just indicates that you may not be able to require that valid driver's license. You may have to just say they have to be able to get valid insurance. And by saying that, they may have to minimally have their provisional license so that they can drive on the street. But that's kind of the hang up with the insurance industry is they're not going to give a 12-year-old insurance on that golf cart because they're not supposed to be driving it on the roadway, versus if somebody is 15 with a provisional license, then conceivably they could have a parent next to them and be driving on the road.
Does the permit holder always have to be with the golf cart, regardless of who's driving?
It doesn't state that, but I think part of that was the intent that that's who that permit is issued to, that person.
Mm-hmm. So if there were multiple drivers, would it behoove us to issue multiple permits so that we know who's actually registered to operate the golf cart?
I can inquire with the city attorney if that's a possibility. Even if, would you be looking, even if it's a single permit with multiple drivers, that all of those individuals are covered with that insurance plan?
Right. So I don't understand the current permitting. So if you issue a permit to operate a golf cart on the streets, does that permit have to be with the golf cart during its operation?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It has to be along with their proof of insurance that if they are stopped for any reason, they would produce that permit.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
The permit's actually attached to the vehicle. The permit's supposed to be displayed on the golf cart.
That permit is,
yes.
And then the ordinance just talks about upon demand, you're supposed to be able to produce your insurance information also.
Correct. So does that take, didn't Mr. Volek, Sean, have, besides ATV, isn't there another type of vehicle that he was talking about in his email?
You're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't remember, Chuck. For some reason, I thought it was just that side-by-side that he was inquiring about because, you know, he has a prosthetic leg and it's easier for him to get in and out of that than a car or a truck. And it was just a convenience thing for him to race up to Coburn's and pick something up.
Right. But I think it was like a UTV or something. I think he had another class of it, a class of vehicle.
Yeah, with depending on the size of it, it could be considered an ATV class 2 if it's a larger and has the 30 or 65-inch distance between the edges of the rims and falls into that definition.
Okay.
But yeah, I know he has one. He has it up there, and he's also, with his email the other day, inquired about if we are going to look at allowing those vehicles also, which that would be incorporated in our snowmobile and all-terrain vehicles. Again, most of them fit into that ATV classification, that it's an ATV and then it's either a class 1 or class 2. Most of your side-by-sides, even your 4-seaters could be a class 2. Anything that goes outside of that range is called a utility tasked vehicle then, that it might have a dump box on it, or it may just be an oversized 4-seater that just weighs too much for the class 2 classification, so it gets bumped up to a utility task vehicle. But yeah, you see more and more of those running around, and by our definition, just the ATV, they fall into that, we need to update our definition with that regarding the two different classes and get that in there, and possibly UTVs also. But ultimately, they are considered a recreational vehicle. The city can allow them to be ridden on our roadways. If we hold them to a recreational vehicle only, that means they can make a direct route from their residence or where it's stored on a direct route out of town, driving on the right side of the road against the curb, in the roadway, less than 15 miles an hour to make that direct route out where they can lawfully utilize that vehicle. That would pertain to snowmobiles in the wintertime, and then ATVs also. I
Jim,
think
Jim,
I
this is
emailed out that regulations from the DNR just to help you see some of those definitions, some of the pictures also, which are here, and it just helps to give you an idea of the difference between them. Like the 4-place Class 2 ATV can be a large vehicle. Some of them can be very loud also. Again, to me, they're designed as a recreational vehicle that doesn't necessarily belong on our roadways within the city for general purpose use. And that's depending on what you want to do as a city. Some cities have them. One of my slides has some of the cities right here. Prior Lake, Savage, Shakopee, Farmington does not allow them within their city limits unless they're licensed as a motor vehicle. The idea of that is any of those vehicles, the state will not license as a motor vehicle. It is considered a recreational vehicle and is licensed through the DNR for that reason. So by saying that, they don't allow them on their streets at all then. Lakeville allows golf carts on bike paths and designated streets, bike lanes from sunrise to sunset, only for persons with disabilities, and a permit's required. Other special vehicles are not allowed unless they're licensed as a motor vehicle again. So those are the non-use for the most part. Belle Plaine and Jordan both kind of have a similar ordinance where they allow UTVs for general transportation, no actual four-wheelers. So the small ATVs that you straddle and sit on, they don't allow on their roads. And then both of them do golf carts for persons with disabilities only are allowed to have a golf cart permit. Then you look at Lonsdale and Elko New Market, where they recently, last fall, and Lonsdale before that, I guess, kind of opened up their city to all general transportation. And they opened up all vehicles, ATVs, golf carts, UTVs, for general transportation, and they permit all of that. And I know a lot of cities to the north where there are trails and things that individuals are able to make their way into town and utilize shopping and restaurants and things. But again, they're utilizing them as recreational vehicles on those trails and just utilizing the city's amenities and businesses to patronize. So there's a difference there, that because we're not a recreational type city, we are a urban city that we control our roadways and the design of those roadways doesn't necessarily allow public safety for all vehicles on the roadway. So that's what I would be first. I'd be looking for direction on the golf cart, and if we want to expand that. But then also for the recreational vehicles, where does the council want to go? What direction with that type of vehicle then?
Mayor, this is Mike, that if I could summarize it, maybe Jim, see if this doesn't summarize it in a few short words for the council, that under the snowmobile and ATV ordinance, ATVs or UTVs, none of that is allowed to be driven on city streets unless it's going from the residence to a point out of town where those vehicles, the snowmobile or the ATV, is used out of town. They cannot be ridden and driven on city streets in general. Is that not correct, Jim?
That's correct, yeah. For general transportation, they're not allowed to be driven around. They're supposed to be on a direct route out of the city.
So any other use other than that is not, it would be in violation of the current ordinance.
Yes.
This is Maggie. You know, as far as the golf cart, Jim, I think we've kind of discussed that and agree that we can open it up from sunrise to 10 p.m. in the morning, or at least look at doing that. For a Class 2 ATV or UTV, so it's a side-by-side sitting or maybe a quad seating, I don't know how loud those vehicles are. Now, snowmobiles are horribly loud and they're very intrusive. But I'm not real familiar with the ATVs and UTVs, if they're quieter, if they're more of a car engine, or if they're more of a two-stroke engine where they're pretty loud. And that's the only thing that would bother me, is just adding more noise pollution if they were a loud engine.
They can be loud. There has been, this spring, there has been more moving around. We moved into town in February, and since that time, I have seen more and more of them just up Chalupski and in the area up there. And some of them are very loud. And that's sometimes the difficult thing about, again, they're made for recreation. So if you go out in the country and you're recreating with it on a property, you have mounds and you're going through water and things, that's what they're designed for. To clean them off and then drive down the road with it, that's not necessarily what they're designed for.
Right, yeah, makes sense.
So it really depends. And I think as a city, we're getting a little more pushback now, because people invest a lot of money, from $15,000 to $25,000 in them. And then they think, boy, I'd really like to drive this more because I can only trailer it up north and drive it up there. So that's where we start getting a little pushback. And that's really where the council has to decide, hey, do we want to be a recreational city and allow our roadways to be utilized that way? Or do we look at it as, hey, they're a recreational vehicle, they don't belong in an urban city setting. You can either drive them on a direct route out or put them on a trailer and take them out and go recreate where it's appropriate.
Right. Yeah, well, you know, I understand that folks want to get more use out of their equipment, but then they also bought the vehicle as more of a recreational vehicle. So that's their decision, and that's their financial decision. I think I would only be in favor if that type of vehicle were licensed as a motor vehicle. Again, it's just more, you know, even to your point, you know, you get this muddy vehicle and it's noisy and it's going down the street. But you know what? You can say that with some of the motorcycles that come through your town
Yeah.
too.
Oh, absolutely.
That they're,
Yep.
you know, they're extremely loud and obnoxious at times. But I guess that's where I stand. And unless there's a real compelling argument other than, well, I spent all this money and I want to use it more, versus, well, it's more economical, it doesn't use as much gas, or it's quieter, or it's electric, whatever the case, well, you know, then I can understand. But I don't want to open Pandora's box and have a lot of these vehicles zipping around town if they're not if they're not licensed as a motor vehicle.
Yeah.
That's just my 2 cents.
And I get inquiries about these utility task vehicles that people say, hey, I have this vehicle and I use it up north, but you know, I store it in my garage if we're not up north, and I'd like to use it to take branches down to the dump. And I had one call me about a month and a half ago and just said, hey, are we able to do that? And I said, no, not by our ordinance. It's not allowed for that. It's a recreational vehicle. And he said, well, I actually
saw one going to the compost site. He hooked up a trailer to it.
Yep. And this individual said, oh, I have a trailer. I can put it on my truck, but I'd just like to use my side-by-side to do it. And I said, it's a recreational vehicle. You're not supposed to use it for that. If you have a vehicle with a trailer, you can throw your branches on the trailer and pull it with your regular vehicle that is licensed for the roadway.
Yeah.
Jim, is there a permitted use? I have an ATV and I forget because I don't have it here in New Prague, but is there a permitted use to use it in the ditches outside of city limits? I'm just trying to understand, is there really a situation where people can legally drive the ATV under our current ordinance to get to an legal use area?
Ditches after August 1st, I think it is, they're able to drive in some ditches.
So we can have people legally drive on our city streets if they're going to a county ditch then or something?
To a place that they can lawfully drive it.
Okay.
The township roads, as long as the township does not state they are not allowed on the township road, they could be utilized on a township road also. But it is up to that township to decide how they're going to handle that. In an actual county road, they are not to be driven. Although the county has an ordinance that allows for these special vehicles, that if a city has an ordinance that allows them by permit, then they are allowed on that county road of the portion that is in that city limits. And I think the county did that for Waterville and Elysian and some of those lake areas that wanted to utilize golf carts and ATVs side by sides for that recreational general purpose. Then, by statute, you cannot drive them on state highways. Even the side by side, you're not allowed to drive on a shoulder. So yeah, that's all through DNR statutes, again, which just shows that they are designated as a recreational vehicle, not a motor vehicle.
So Jim, this is Chuck. If they're a licensed vehicle, then they can drive on any street, highway, and everything?
If they were licensed as a motor vehicle through the state of Minnesota.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And there's some specialty vehicles. I saw one over the weekend. It's the trike with a rear wheel in the back. That's how he steers and turns. That is a specialized vehicle that holds a regular license plate on it through the state of Minnesota. So it is roadworthy and allowed to be on the road.
Okay. So where does the council, what direction do we want Jim to go with this? Are we all kind of agreeing on the golf cart from sunrise to 10 p.m.?
I'm good with that.
This is Maggie, yes.
This is
Bruce,
Bruce. I would agree with that with the manufactured headlights and et cetera, all that.
Yeah, yeah. Rick, you're fine with that on the golf carts?
Yeah, I'm good with that. 10 o'clock is fine.
Okay, and then what about the ATVs and that? Do we just want him to clean it up so it's a little bit more consistent, or what?
This is Bruce.
I like Maggie's proposal.
What's that?
Said I like Maggie's proposal that unless it's a licensed by the state as a motorized vehicle, that it's recreational and has no place for city streets. Is that what you were saying, Maggie?
Exactly, yes.
So except they still can drive from their garage to out of town?
To a designated, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Bruce, you were going to say something?
No, I would agree with that too. My experience is they're just driven differently, and I've done that up north, and some cities and communities are geared toward it where the trail goes up to the restaurant, and there are more specific routes to these businesses. We're not geared up for that. So I would agree with the licensed motor vehicle scenario.
Okay.
And I will look at the ordinance and kind of bring it up to date with definitions and things, and then probably have that verbiage in there also, that unless it is a licensed motor vehicle, it cannot be driven for general purposes on our street, on our roadways.
Yeah. But we're talking about golf carts can be used for general purposes. We're changing ordinance till 10 p.m., so it doesn't mean that it's just going to and from the golf course, or what?
Well, I think the intent when we put that ordinance in place was that people wanted to drive to the golf course and utilize it for that. When the ordinance went into place, we couldn't define the usage then. That if we are allowing a golf cart to drive on our roadways, on designated roadways, then that kind of opens it up to general purpose transportation.
Okay.
And again, with golf carts, to Maggie's point, hey, generally they are quiet, and I don't see a lot of issues or concerns, and they travel at a low speed. Some of the UTVs, ATVs, you know, they have the opportunity to go 60 miles an hour on a roadway. Again, the idea, even snowmobiles, the idea is, hey, you travel at a low speed of 15 miles an hour or less and make a direct route out of town for your lawful purpose of driving out there. And I know one individual on the south side of the city that utilizes his to drive out to a farm out there. And again, as long as he's appropriate in town on the right side of the road and driving at low speeds, that is not a problem. If he's going to be traveling fast and down the lanes of traffic, then it becomes a concern for me, a public safety concern. So okay. No, I will address our ordinances and get both of those ordinances in front of you for approval and reading, and then we can go from there.
Sounds good.
All
Thank you,
right.
Jim.
I appreciate your time.
All right. Mike.
I'll wait till Ken pulls down the ordinance discussion here. Or is that in Jim's hands?
I'm
trying to take it away from him.
They're fighting over ownership right now.
I don't know,
think
Jim,
you can
you
take
might
it
have to
back
let it go. Huh?
Can you take it back?
The only thing I can do is kick you off, but I don't want to do that.
Okay.
There we go.
Done.
There we go.
Sorry for the delay.
All right, well, I'll try to pick up the last little bit of pace here before the end, since it's gone probably longer than you might have been expecting. But what you've got in front of you tonight is the proposed final draft of the 2020-2021 labor agreement with Law Enforcement Labor Services and our police union. We've been working on this for the past probably 5 to 6 months in the process. And so we've had a number of closed sessions. And so the summary that I've got in my memo tonight is that we've got provisions that you have seen previously with changes in a number of different sections. I've highlighted the sections in my memo that are changing from the overtime and premium pay as it relates to compensatory time balances, the holidays, which was some language changes, vacation. We had the new schedule that was added, similar to what went into the new personnel policy back in, I believe it was February or early March. Sick leave, some language changes. Severance was a policy change. Insurance was some date changes. Wages, we had some language on court appearance language. Small increase in the annual allowance on the clothing uniform allowance. Duration is 2 years, and then wages for the 2 years at 3% and 2.75%. I have received executed signature pages from the business agent and the union steward, so the union is in agreement with the document that's in front of you this evening.
And basically, Mike, it hasn't changed since the changes you made is what we discussed at the last closed session.
That's correct.
And everything is consistent with that.
It is.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have any questions?
I just have one comment, and Mike, I don't know if there's anything that we can do about it, but Article 5 on page 4, if there's a typo, so it says the employer retains the full and unrestricted right, and it probably should read retains the full and unrestricted right. So even though the agreement is already executed by the union, maybe that change can be made and then they can just initial that change.
I can have a conversation. I don't think that'll be a big issue, Maggie.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? If not, I guess I will make a motion to approve the labor agreement for 2021 with the police union.
Second.
Second by Rick Seiler. If there's no other comments or questions, okay, take a vote here. Councilmember Seiler.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bass.
Aye.
Mayor Nikolai says aye, passes 5-0. Great job, Mike. And then you just want to bring up the memorandum of understanding?
Yeah, this is something that you really haven't seen in the past and is relatively new for me, although I've seen them in a number of other jurisdictions. That as we try to go to implement the provision we have in trying to reduce the compensatory hours from 240 down to 140, as well as reducing the end of the year maximum compensatory time balance from 240 down to 80, is that when we started working on trying to obtain these reductions as part of the union negotiations, and again, you have to remember this is encompassed probably from late November, December, and now through the first 4 months here of 2020, is that as we try to go take a look at making these reductions, obviously these are hours that we as the employer owe the employees already. So the numbers that they might have that are on the books are already there and have been at those levels, as you've seen identified in the union contract language. But as we try to reduce those, there were a number of the employees that either were looking at trying to take that time as a vacation or time off, and it was back in the early part of March and in through April here, where obviously that due to the COVID-19 issues, there's been limited abilities to try to choose to go take this time off. Whether there's going to be enough changing in the coming weeks and months here to allow some of that is somewhat unknown. But in their agreement to agree to those reductions in those hours, all in an effort, and again, long term, the goal was to try to ratchet down the accumulation of these hours to ensure that any hours that would carry over from one fiscal year to the next, that we're trying to pay those off as close to the hourly rate as it's being earned versus allowing that to build up and accumulated and paid off years down the road. And that there was agreement to do that. There's already a provision in the existing contract that we reviewed earlier in our preparations for this, is, if you recall, is that there is a provision where the city, if the employee requests it, that they can cash out up to 40 hours of compensatory time either in June or December of each year. But in trying to take a look at it, even with that, some of them would still need to take some additional time off to try to get those balances down. And in light of the fact that we're now just approving the agreement here the 1st of May, they've inquired that as a part of trying to agree to that language, would the council be willing, by way of a memorandum of understanding, not through any type of contract language change, but an agreement, is that whatever the compensatory balance is as of basically the adoption of this memorandum, our payroll runs through Saturday, so that would be May 2nd, is if their compensatory time balance exceeds the 140 hours, and there are some that exceed that and are in the low 200s, is that they have basically up until next May 1 to bring these numbers ultimately into the compliance by taking an action where we would effectively freeze the ceiling of their compensatory balance would be no more than what it is as of the payroll here on May 2nd, that it could only come down, and or looking at trying to move towards the 80-hour carryover balance, is that basically we're moving the implementation of this basically ultimately till May 1 of next year. And so it's not as if we won't hit those balances, it's a request to give them some time and the employees in light of what has occurred, and knowing somewhat the unknown, so to speak, with being able to take vacation and time off and trying to make sure that we handle our staffing in this period of the COVID-19, that they just have a little longer time period to get to this. You know, one could say that, no, if we adopted it right now, we could either choose to pay off to bring everybody down to the 140-hour maximum balance. As I try to give you an idea, if I did that right now, just the hourly rate would cost us about $11,000. And then that still means that they have to work towards either a request for payout either in June or December, and the utilization of time to get to the 80 hours. I think the long-term goal to the city was to gain a greater control of being able to get those hours down and to manage that going forward, because ultimately the time that ends up getting earned hopefully is getting paid closer to what the hourly rate was then in effect at the time that that was earned, versus hanging on to that indefinitely going forward. So the union has worked with us well, I think, to agree to the new limitations. I guess what I'm proposing with the memorandum of understanding is I'm recommending to you that we move to accommodate their request to try to implement it by May 1 of next year.
Mike, this is Maggie. I have a question. How is the current COVID-19 situation affecting scheduling? If we're fully staffed and all of our wonderful police officers are continuing their normal schedule, why is that affecting anything? I mean, vacations can still be taken and compensatory time can still be taken. So I'm just trying to understand the nuance there.
Jim, you want to talk a little bit about that as to how things are working in your scheduling with the teams that you have, and trying to incorporate that in while making sure that we're keeping people safe, so that if somebody happened to become sick, it doesn't wipe out half of the police department.
Yeah, currently we have 2 teams. Each team is made up of 4 patrol officers, and they work in that team. They're scheduled out for 4 days on, and then that team goes off for 4 days, and the other team is covering. That's how it rotates. And they could take some vacation. They're able to do that, but I need 3 officers to cover the 3 shifts for the day, and then that other officer is able to have time off if they choose to do that. So that's how the schedule is operating right now. We're still keeping our separation from the other team. In the event that somebody does come down with the virus, that the idea is it'll only affect that team if that it's contagious and it's exchanged within the team anyways. But we have not gone to the degree that a lot of cities and counties have gone to, hey, no vacations this summer, and they're just not allowing anybody to take vacations. I've had a couple requests already about some people that wanted to travel, and we review our policy that we have right now, that if you travel outside of the state, if you're flying or something and you come back, we have to do an assessment when you come back, and if there are concerns about you may have been exposed or you have some signs or symptoms, then you may be asked to take a quarantine time of 14 days. So
okay.
That's out there with that. And to that degree, a lot of them, if they want to go to Florida, they don't know if things are going to be open down there. So it's difficult to plan a vacation at this time.
Oh yeah, and that's yeah, I get that, and that's the same for everyone. But they can take a vacation time, but they can't use compensatory time, or seemingly can't. So I'm just trying to understand the difference there.
No, there is no difference. I mean, both of them are a bank for them to use, and if they choose to burn compensatory time over their vacation, they can do that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any, excuse me, any other questions? Okay, if not, I look for a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding.
Rick here. I'll move it.
Okay, I got a motion by Rick Seiler.
Second, Bruce.
Got a second by Bruce Wolf. Excuse me. If there's no other comments or questions, Councilmember Seiler,
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf,
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan,
Aye.
Councilmember Bass,
Aye.
Mayor Nikolai says aye. Memorandum understanding passes 5-0. Excuse me. Next, Jim, you're going to kind of give us an update of what's going on. COVID wise?
Relatively short with the governor's extension of the stay at home until the 18th. Things are kind of the same. We are, as the city staff, we're looking at what will we do to open up our city hall and what mechanisms will we have in place for that. On our DPS meeting this morning, some individuals talked about they'll probably have stickers on the floors to help social distancing and keep people apart. But as a staff, we'll probably be talking about that on Wednesday when we have our meeting about keeping the cleaning mechanisms in place to keep surfaces clean while still being able to deliver services more on a face-to-face basis. We're also looking at putting up some sort of barrier, a plexiglass type barrier for some of our windows to minimize that exposure for both the customers and also the employees at City Hall. So we're just taking that in right now. I think the governor's getting a lot of pressure about getting things opened up and moving things along. So we'll see what happens here in this next 2 weeks and see where it goes.
Okay, any other comments on that, Glenn, Mike, or Ken?
No.
Okay.
Everything's, we're rolling the same in Public Works. We're getting more guys back because there's naturally more to do. And eventually we'll have everybody back, but we are working really hard at still trying to keep them separate. They're instructed to wear masks if they have to work as a group, which it's going to come. It has to come. There's just enough going on that those are stuff to wear with masks. But they do a great job of cleaning up, all the touch surfaces twice a day, daily. So they're taking it in stride and they're doing a good job trying to protect themselves and their fellow employees.
Okay, good. Okay, anything else on that topic? If not, I guess we'll just wait and see what the governor has to say on the 18th. Probably before that. I'm sure it'll be that Thursday or Friday beforehand. Okay, next on the agenda, consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions on anything, items in the consent agenda? Remember that we took letter C out because the Memorial Day parade has been canceled already. They still are planning to do a program on the radio. I've been asked to do a little welcome on that. And I think as of right now, they're still planning to do the color guard. We're going to go to each of the cemeteries and do the 21 gun salute and list the names. But as far as I know, that's the extent of the program. So anything else on in the consent agenda? Any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
Rick, second.
Okay, I got a motion by Sean Ryan, second by Rick Seiler. If there's no other comments, Councilmember Seiler,
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf,
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan,
Aye.
Councilmember Bass,
Aye.
Mayor Nikolai says aye, so the consent agenda passes 5-0. Now we're at the fun part, miscellaneous. Ken, do you have anything?
No, I do not have anything.
Okay. Patrick, how are you doing? He's doing okay. Jim?
I have nothing more.
Okay. Glenn?
Yeah, just a quick update on the biosolids fire. We should be close to closing that out. We're waiting for a couple of bills. There's a couple of pieces, minor items that are back ordered that where I'm paying the bill, so that's taken care of. But we did run the bagger system that was in the room with the fire. Seemed to work real good last week. So we'll go forward now with starting to dry. We're still looking at options as far as protection. What are our best options? Unfortunately, with COVID, they're all telling us that they're not coming out to check the site out. A lot of their employees aren't even working. So we just got to wait. So, but we are pursuing it. We haven't given up on that. Looking for options to help prevent this from ever happening again. So,
okay.
That's all I got.
Thank you. Barb, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay. So, Michael, how about you?
I have one item. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, we finally heard back from the Minnesota Department of Transportation Office of Civil Rights. And basically their indication was that SM Hinges, which is the contractor on our project, has met the DBE good faith effort requirements on our project. And as such, they cleared our project to begin. So,
Yahoo!
yeah, you approved 2 weeks ago tonight, you approved the award of bid to SM Hinges contingent upon approval from the Office of Civil Rights. I think we've been in constant contact with them every 3 to 4 days ever since then, but it wasn't until about 4 o'clock this afternoon that we got formal clearance that they have effectively approved it. They said today, but the date on their letter is actually May 1, so that would have been Friday. Basically we have the clearance to move ahead. Now we've got a fair amount of work to do with contracts with them and compliance things with MnDOT contract language based on agreements that we have. So we will move forward in earnest to do that. It's my guess that it's going to take us probably a couple of weeks here to get everything in compliance to the point that the mayor and I, based on the city attorney's recommendation, can actually formally approve the contracts with SM Hinges. That all of that has been pulled together, but we formally have to go through a number of different things. So the next step while that's ongoing is we will be trying to set up a partnering meeting between MnDOT, the city engineer, and our staff to take a look at what is likely involved in the contract as to what we're going to be able to do, what are the schedules going to look like, and what are the pre-construction dates where we meet with everybody to formally get started. To date, the contractor hasn't been willing to talk about any of this because, number one, they haven't had a contract. So they weren't going to invest a significant amount of time or effort until they knew that they have a contract. And they got word today as well that the approval just came out of the Office of Civil Rights today. So they will now begin moving forward in earnest with us to take a look at that. So the question I'm sure most of you have is that with all of that, what are we likely looking at? That in order to go through to get contracts done, to get a pre-construction meeting set up so that we know what's going on, so that we have an idea what the schedule is likely you're not going to see anything occur until probably after Memorial Day or about the 1st of June.
And in those discussions, Mike, will we talk about maybe trying to do the core downtown as opposed to the original schedule that was in the RFP?
We will. That exact letter went out the very next day, 2 weeks ago, as you requested. But we won't know until we get into the partnering discussions and the conversations with the contractor as to what he has up his sleeve and what he is wanting and or willing to do under the contract terms. That if you remember, both Chris and I, even though you asked for us to take a look at something different than what had been bid, that's what's there contractually, unless they were to agree to do something else. And what I don't know is whether that could entail any kind of change order and proposed cost to do that. We don't know that until we get into those discussions. But yes, it's our intent to revisit that and to see whether that is a possibility.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I guess that's good news, and looking forward to hearing some updates in the future. So,
Patrick, if there's something more that you need tomorrow morning, let's make sure we talk so that you've got what you need for the article, because we haven't really been able to communicate a whole lot to the public or to the business community or anybody, just because we haven't had any indications until we got this afternoon about 4 o'clock. We had nothing to share.
All right.
okay. Anything else, Michael?
No.
Okay. Rick, do you have anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
Bruce?
No, nothing.
Okay. Sean?
Nope.
Maggie?
No, thank you.
Okay. The only thing I have is I think you were emailed from Barb some marketing results and efforts from the New Prague Golf Course. I just want to say that we've had a lot of play, which is good. The snack bar issue results seem to be getting a little stronger too, so I think things are going in the right direction. I know they've been busy. The carts have been an issue because only one person can be on the cart. So I know Kurt's looking at some options there. But overall, I think it's been a good start for the situation we have at hand. So I don't have anything else besides that. The only thing, Mike, I guess is, I don't know when the counties could let us know, what their delinquent percentage is on property taxes, because obviously that's coming up May 15th, which could kind of help us figure out what's going to maybe happen with our revenue on the budget side.
We've gotten an indication from Scott County that they're looking at pushing the payment time period from May 15th to July 15th with no penalties. They're expecting all of those that pay by way of
on their mortgages, you mean? Escrow?
Escrow. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word right offhand. Is that those would continue to come in, and then anybody that owes greater than 100,000 has to make a special request to be considered by the board. So we're expecting to still get the contributions that would come in through escrow and any other voluntary payments as normal. And then obviously there could be some push to July, and so we won't know what that is at the present time, but the county administrator indicated that they would attempt to keep us informed as to kind of what's happening on that front as we move forward.
Okay, good.
And
Okay.
I did have one additional item before you close that, Ken, you're on, we're making the transition tomorrow on the technology conversion.
Yeah, we're changing over to our new network cabling. It's the best way to put that. So we'll be down network and internet wise at City Hall between hopefully 9 to 11. That includes the golf course being down at that time. They're aware of that out there as well. Necessary to get the changeover done, but that'll get us on the actual new network now, and should help reliability and the speeds for everybody. So kind of a big event, and they're going to have staff on site throughout tomorrow and then Wednesday to make sure that all the little bugs are worked out, because there inevitably will be. But big step in the process for the IT.
Ken, I did notice that we had some computer issues on Saturday at the golf course. I don't know if those were, because it was both at the clubhouse and the snack bar. So was that more
City Hall,
Bevcon?
our server went down. I don't know why yet, but it was a city outage. Yeah.
Okay. And hopefully this conversion will, make that not happening.
It'll make it easier to figure out what happened, because right now they can't monitor switches and all that. So, yep.
Okay, good. Anything else from anyone? Okay, if not, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Sean Ryan. Councilmember Seiler?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan?
Aye.
Councilmember Bass?
Aye.
Mayor Nikolai says aye. We're out of here. Thank you everyone for your time, and stay safe, and we'll see you around.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.